diving into the Cyberpunk universe for a good while now, and I'm grateful that a lot of you regularly tune in to see what lore I cover. Some of you, however, ask questions in the comments about some of the lore that I simply couldn't tell you. So I thought I'd reach out to some of my contacts at Talzorian Games, the original creators of the Cyberpunk series, and see if they would answer some of the questions you pitched and get their insight into how the world works and more. So in today's video, I speak to Jay Gray from that company, pretty much the man that knows all of the lore from the beginning, works extremely closely with Mike Pondsmith, the original creator, and has had a major part in the world design of Night City in 2045. And as we sat down, I asked him all of the questions I could and got his response to them. I do have to say before we dive into the interview, however, that unfortunately a lot of the 2077 lore is property of CD Projekt Red, and until they get back to me about an interview, I couldn't really get any more information on the video game's specific lore. On top of that, many situations and characters are off limits, such as Morgan Blackhand, so if you sent in questions about him or specific countries, I'm afraid they couldn't be covered here. But a lot of the answers given by Jay I found to be extremely insightful, and I had an absolute blast speaking with this man who could pull a small quote from a rare cyberpunk book made in 1988 out in a couple of seconds. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some lore questions being answered by the team responsible for the creation of this fantastic IP. I started the interview with my own question to get an insight into how lore creation works at Talzorian Games and how characters are made for Cyberpunk. Here I ask him, can you give us a brief insight into how lore creation works when coming up with a story or a character?
Oh, there are so many ways it happens. Sometimes I have a piece of art and I say, who is this person? Or Mike says it, or James says it, or someone on the team says it. Often it comes from one of our freelance writers, people we hire to work on books like Chris Spivey or Melissa Wong or Eddie Webb, and they'll come up with characters. And it often is just, we have a situation, we need a character, we need that person. Other times it is just a flash of inspiration. There is a character, for example, we had to do a DLC, and the DLC was all guns. It was just a variety of guns. So there was a variety of guns, and I needed a fictional framework, and I decided there's this guy and he has an underground gun range, and I was playing with it, and it popped in my head that he hates the 3 C's. And I'm like, he hates corpse, he hates cops, and I was like, what's the 3rd C? And I decided, well, the 3rd C is cetaceans, sea mammals, dolphins, whales, that sort of thing. And that's because during in the Firestorm books, where the 4th Corporate War is detailed, there is a nice entry on how they created they cyber-fitted dolphins and orcas to use as scouting devices, weapons, and the like during the time when it was an ocean war between Sino and OTEC. And I'm like, wow. So he has decided that we uplifted the dolphins, and the dolphins got so intelligent that they actually arranged the 4th Corporate War to happen and the destruction of the net happen so that they could take over the planet. And that character just grew from there beautifully. So a lot of times it's just this bizarre flash of inspiration.
Artsy Burden asks, were you ever once self-conscious of your creative endeavors? If so, what helped you get through that?
Well, the term kind of means 2 different things. On the one hand, you have what's often called imposter syndrome, which is, I'm doing this, I'm not qualified, there's no way I'm the person that's involved in this. And that you keep doing it. That is the important thing. You keep doing it. You don't let it stop you. You have a deadline. You have to meet it, and that's important. The other thing is just, it feels weird at times, and I believe Mike feels this a lot. Mike's a relatively humble guy, despite his high profile, and it feels weird, and you're like, people keep asking me to talk to me and do things with me and asking me questions, and all I want to do is go over here and play with my little guys and make games and write stories. And so at the same time, Mike, myself, everyone who's ever made a game, every artist, there's some part of them that wants to share what they make, and you have to listen to that part. And it's a tough balance between ego and the I am this and I am in charge of this and you have to listen to me, and the I want you to share in this thing I'm creating. And I think part of it comes down to emotion. I want to share a world with people, and I don't want them to play the game I make. I want them to take the game that I help make, take it to their table, and then play the game they make at their table. That's important. And then when they do that, I hear about it. And it's like we're part of this great immersive creative community. And that is, I think, honestly, that's the way we get through it, is realizing we're part of something bigger. And that's important.
Do you ever like see yourself in it? Because I know Mike's got a character that he made sort of himself in it. Do you ever see yourself in the world?
Mike has several characters, most of which he did not create. Maximum Mike is his creation. There is a character named Omni Kismet, who was created for the original Netrunner card game put out by Wizards of the Coast, who looks a lot like Mike. Mike did not create him. He was made as a tribute to Mike. There's a couple others here or there. And for the most part, Mike is like, these are characters who look like me, but only Maximum Mike, which is just a persona he puts on when talking to fans sometimes, is the actual me character. I do have a character who uses a old tag I've made. So when I am playing, say, a visual novel, and they say, what's your character, or playing Skyrim, they say, what's your character's name? I always name my character Tag, first name Tag, last name Onist. And I omit the pro because they're the protagonist. It was this goofy thing I did when I was much younger, and I've continued doing it on. And there is a character named Tagonist in one of the books. They are not really my proxy. It's just I liked reusing the name and putting that little joke in there for myself.
It's really good. It took me a second, actually. But Desh Holmes asks, were characters like Johnny Silverhand, Morgan Blackhand, Raish Bartmoss, and Alt Cunningham based off of player characters from the early days like Sir Robilar and AD&D?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I've honestly never gotten a clear answer as to whether Johnny Morgan, for example, let's take Never Fade Away. Never Fade Away, which is a storyline you play, spoilers, you play through 2077, in which Johnny, Alt is kidnapped and Johnny rescues her. That story first appears in the Cyberpunk box set, the original edition, back in 1988, in which it tells a story and it gives you little rules so you can play along to help Johnny and Rogue and Nomad Santiago and Thompson rescue Alt. And it has never been made clear to me whether Mike wrote the story and then made the rules, or whether they played a session and wrote a story based on the session. I know Johnny predates any role-playing game character, because Mike has said that he first wrote a story about Johnny way back when and then expanded on it. Some characters certainly, and I don't think Raish was a character first. I think Raish Bartmoss was a throwaway quote, actually, I believe, in the original source books. They needed someone to represent Netrunners in quotes that they had on the side of the page, and Raish was there, and they expanded on them from there. Spider Murphy was first. Spider was played by Lisa Ponsmith, Mike's wife, in the game. A character based on her with a different spelling of the name that became Spider Murphy in the book. And Lisa likes to say that Spider Murphy is not my Spider Murphy, even though I inspired her. They are different characters. I spell my character's name differently.
Right. I had no idea.
Yeah. Essentially, some characters probably did and some characters don't. And it gets really confusing after a while because so many people have worked on Cyberpunk. And I guarantee some of them were like, oh, I'll make a character. I play this character. Of course, I'm going to slip them in. I've done that. I know other people have done that. But I don't think any character is like firmly, oh, this was my character and I made them the center of the universe the way that Johnny and Morgan and Alt are in that way.
Fair enough. That's crazy about Raish, considering that he's just a throwaway, considering how big of a character he is now to the lore.
It often happens. So there's a phenomenon I call the waiter phenomenon in games, where, for example, you're the GM and your characters go to a restaurant and you play a waiter, and for some reason the way you play that waiter really tickles your players. And as a result, the waiter becomes a great character, and the waiter keeps showing up, and the waiter becomes a much larger part of the story. I think that happens in fiction too, and Raish was the waiter in that situation.
Farewell Noob asks, how do so many people still live in Night City despite the cost of living being so hostile, making it uninhabitable for many?
Why did people live in New York in the 1970s? Yes, some people left, absolutely. Some people can't leave. Keep in mind that, especially in 2045, there is a lot of hostile out there. There's a lot of, first of all, transport's not easy. The highway system's not being kept up. There are trains, but they're not really running well. Planes are expensive. Moving to another city, anybody who's ever moved to a new city knows it's an expensive proposition. You've got to go. You've got to find a place. Without being there, you've got to deposit last month's security deposit for your rent. You've got to find a job. Moving to another city is a complex situation. And if you don't have the resources to do that, where are you going to go? And so that is. And other people, they're doing just fine in Night City, right? If you have money, Night City is not a bad place to live. If you don't have money, Night City is a horrible place to live, but you don't have the money to go someplace better. And when you do go someplace better, you don't have a support structure. Your support structure, whatever it is in Night City. We have one of the things that drives cyber psychosis is not necessarily cyberware, for example. It's, do you have a support structure? David had a support structure. You say, for example, Edgerunner spoilers now, David was built different. David's not built different. David had a mom who loved him and took care of him. And when he lost that, and as the effect of her care wears off over time, his cyber psychosis approaches more rapidly. So leaving your support system, leaving your leaving what you know, that's tough. That's tough enough without the money you need to start over in a new city and the resources. Even in, say, the beginning of the street run through for 2077, V comes back to Night City, and we never quite find out why, but it's intimated that V failed there. And that's probably because V didn't have a support structure there. V wasn't able to integrate because it wasn't where V was from.
Could you also argue, because I remember in our last interview you also said about how the nature of Night City and its design is very all over the place, there's roads that loop back on one another and don't make a lot of sense. Could you argue that it's sort of the whole city forces you to stay in a way?
Yes, I mean, without getting too metaphysical, because Star Trek, I don't know why I said that, because Night City, Cyberpunk is not a metaphysical setting in a grand sense, but Night City is a character in Cyberpunk. Night City is, in fact, the main character in a lot of ways in most of Cyberpunk, and Night City wants you there. And Night City was designed to be there. It is this. There's nothing around it. There's this oasis in the middle of nowhere of city, and it wants you there. It keeps you there, and it provides bright, glittery bread and circuses distraction in the form of brain dances and drugs and television and radio and pretty lights to keep you there. And you're right. What Bess Isis said, nobody leaves Night City except in a body bag. And that's what it is. It's hard to leave Night City, whether because if you want to get spiritual and say Night City wants you to stay, or you want to get more economic and say it's expensive to leave. It's the same reason why everyone stays in Gotham, even though the Joker is blowing up city blocks every other week.
Jaden One asks, I would like to know more about the economics of Night City. It seems like it is meant to be a libertarian techno-feudalism hellscape in that corps run like their own fiefdoms, but there is still a central town municipality. So who pays for the roads, the utilities, etc.? Who settles disputes between corporations?
Okay, so we'll be getting into this in an upcoming book that we're working on right now, a bit called the Night City set source book for the 2045 period. And I'm going to talk about 2045 because that's my area of expertise. So the answer is Night City, while the corporations hold a lot of sway, they do not hold all the sway. There is a Night City Council. Corporations, anybody who has money and is willing to pay for a seat has a seat on the Night City Council. It is not an elected position for the most part. Every district does pay for a council seat, but in some of those districts there are elections. But for the most part, if you're willing to pay for it, you can hold it. The caveat is you're only allowed to have one seat. So Biotechnica has a seat, Militech has a seat, et cetera, et cetera. some corporations. The NCPD at that point has a seat on the city council in conjunction with a few other organizations. They pooled the resources for that. So it's a mishmash. It's what Mike calls a junta, a group of people coming together. Now, who pays for everything? There's taxes. Night City is still a tax place where you pay taxes. You pay sales tax. There are property taxes, and so forth. There are also police pay for a lot of their budget through seizures of property. If you commit a crime, you forfeit your stuff, and the police sell it and make money off of it. It's like the real world, only cranked up to 10. As for who is paying for the roads and utilities and stuff, a lot of the infrastructure is initially paid for by Night Corp. Where Night Corp's getting the money is a great question, and not one that I can answer at this time. For disputes between corporations, some disputes get settled the old-fashioned way in the boardroom. Some disputes get settled in the streets. Sometimes it gets bad enough that the council does step in and say, hey, I couldn't get to work today. My constituents couldn't get to work today because you blew up half a city block. Cut it out. And then they negotiate a settlement. And that's part of the advantage of being there on the city council, is that the city council will kind of bring you in and help you solve things.
I love that. They blow up a whole street and just go, could you not?
Yeah. Well, it's Silverware and Petrochem. There's this running gag we do in 2045 in Cyberpunk RED, where every time there's a Silverware thing, there's also a Petrochem thing nearby and vice versa. So, for example, their headquarters are right across the street from each other. They actually share a 2-building complex for their employees. And it's a running jag that these two, Silverware, for those who know, Silverware and Petrochem fought the Second Corporate War. They were the first major corporations, not the first to go to war against each other, but the first to go to war against each other on a global, actual military scale. As opposed to just strike teams, they had actual militaries fighting each other. And so the joke is they've never quite, no winner was ever declared. It wasn't the kind of war where someone surrenders. And so it's still going on under the surface. And for whatever reason, we keep putting them together so that the war boils harder in 2045.
DSSR 5158 asks, I would like to know more about the way the Corpo world works with the Merc world. Why Mercs can cause damage without direct repercussions? Because we see that contracts are made that damage operations or personnel, and the consequences are something that is not seen too much. Like, what does the Corp on the receiving end do? Do they blame the Merc, the fixer, the one who gave the job, or do they just take it and tally another loss?
Oh, that's complicated. That is a complicated question with a complicated answer. And I hate to let this person down who asked it, but the truth is, it depends. Was it important? Was it really important? For example, okay, Never Fade Away. It's not as easy to tell. It's not as dramatic a destruction of a building as the destruction of Night City, the Arasaka towers during the Fourth Corporate War. But that building, the Arasaka building, is trashed by the end of Never Fade Away. They're setting off explosives in the stairwells and the elevator shafts in order to cause chaos and confusion. They seriously damage the building. They do nasty. And Johnny and Rogue and Nomad and Thompson go on the run after that. They go down and hang out with the Avocados in Mexico and hide for a while. I think it was a couple of years. So the answer is sometimes, yes, they do blame you. Now, in the situation where you are hired, your edge running team is hired. You are a mercenary crew. You are hired to go do something. You're hired by Biotechnica to go shut down a Continental Brands facility. Continental Brands doesn't blame you necessarily. They blame Biotechnica, and they're not going to attack Biotechnica directly. Also recognize that there are limited resources out there, and you are a resource. What if they want to hire you someday? So they don't necessarily blame you or try to kill you. No, if you do enough damage, if you do enough nasty, if you piss off the wrong person with enough power, they absolutely will try to kill you. But if it's a job and the job doesn't cause major damage to the corporation, so you have two things. It causes so much damage that the corporation can't retaliate because they don't have the resources, or only causes damage to a very specific part of the corporation. And yeah, that sucks, but this corporation is so big, it's like if you trash somebody's bathroom, they're not going to kill you because they still have the rest of the house. That's a bad example, but you get my idea is that it's not a big enough thing. And as an example, this is a bit of a spoiler for anyone has not played Tales of the Red Hope Reborn, and I'll try to be as generic as possible. In one of the missions, a corporate executive gets a new position opening a thing. She convinces her company to branch out into a new field and opens the first store for that field. Your group goes in and ruins it, literally on opening night. And in the end, that is seen as that person's failure, not your damage. Now, that person may want revenge against you, but the corporation sees it as their problem and not your problem, because they should have known this was coming. They should have had the right security. They should have, it's easier to blame someone closer at hand than it is to go find out who did it, who hired them. There's a lot of work there. That's resources that has to be paid. So that's how Mercs working in the edge running field continue to work. Part of it's that there are resources that the corporations don't want to throw away. There's this kind of unspoken rule. Edge runners don't screw over fixers. Fixers don't screw over their edge runners. And the corporations don't screw over fixers either, because you never know when you're going to need them.
So essentially, when it gets personal, it gets personal. But otherwise, everything's just contract based.
Yeah. Now, if you destroy somebody's special project and that someone still has power, congratulations. You've made an enemy of someone you've essentially made an enemy of that corporation, up until the point in which that person's vendetta against you becomes too expensive for the corporation to deal with. And then the corporation says, you're costing us too much money. It's time to redact.
Daniel Gilbert 3243 asks, is there a city in the Cyberpunk universe that has low crime rates and everything just works?
Yeah, the Crystal Palace is probably like that, very low crime rates, or at least the crime that occurs is not what is more white collar and smuggling and stock market manipulation, unless I'm mugging you in the alley, because there's just not enough room for it. And everyone kind of knows everyone. It's a low population and it's heavily patrolled. On Earth, there are places, I don't know that there's any one city that's super low crime, but there are cities where there are spots where there isn't much crime, or again, there isn't as much crime in the mugging murder sense. There's always plenty of crime in the I'm screwing over the world through finances and manipulation and signing papers sense. In fact, that the fact that we often think of white collar crime as less dangerous than blue collar crime is a theme of Cyberpunk, because I think we had Rogue quoted once as saying, I'm more afraid of the guy. I'm not afraid of the guy with the gun. I'm afraid of his boss, because the guy with the gun can kill maybe 20 people, and his boss can kill thousands with the stroke of a pen.
That's a very good point, really. What is crime? What makes something a dangerous place?
Yeah, exactly.
What makes a person dangerous? I think
exactly. It's a great question.
One of those big questions, yeah.
Yeah, Cyberpunk is all about big questions. It really is. And they're questions that we encourage everyone to ask themselves, and Cyberpunk, like all good science fiction, as in the past, says, what does this say about our world? What questions are you asking about it, and how can we make the world better or worse by following the themes in this story? And science fiction's always been about the metaphor of the real world, and Cyberpunk, it's important to continue that tradition.
Green Eyes Samurai asks, what are their favorite gangs or gang of Night City, and why?
Okay, so I'm going to start with saying that I don't tend to pick favorites. I love all my children equally. I've got a whole philosophy behind picking favorites, and it boils down to, when you pick favorites, you diminish everybody that's not your favorite, and so they're less enjoyable. I try to enjoy them all. That being said, of course, I have a soft spot for the gangs I've personally created. I love the albino alligators. They're this party gang that lives in Rancho Coronado, and they're in an abandoned car wash that they make their headquarters. And the thing is that before the Fourth Corporate War, this abandoned car wash ordered these massive crates full of shirts to do with giveaways with. And so the joke is, as long as there are shirts, there are albino alligators, and there are always more shirts. But other gangs, I really like, we haven't gotten a chance to explore them a lot yet, but the Enhanced, they are a gang that believes that cyberpsychosis represents a symptom of the next stage of evolution. So basically, they have a techno-futuristic transhumanist kind of viewpoint where humans will evolve themselves using technology, but they think that evolution also involves a heavy survival of the fittest, violent aspect to it. And they own a budget firearms company called Gunmart that makes incredibly cheap weapons to help speed up the process of human evolution.
I didn't know about that one.
The more people, that's something we've said a lot. We've said it here and there, and it's something we've been slowly building. But yeah, Gunmart, which is sort of like the budget arms of 2045, is owned by a cult. 2 examples. I can go on all day about gangs, and there's dozens of them in Cyberpunk RED, but those are 2 really cool ones that I really enjoy. They represent kind of 2 versions of gangs. There's other gangs that are cool. The 6th Street is cool in 2045 because they're trying not to be a gang, but they are at the same time. They're trying to be a security company. And the Guardians, I like that gang in Night City does not mean gang in the same way that does the real world. Gang is a group of individuals banded together for a purpose who aren't a legal corporate entity. And so it could be everything from Maelstrom to the Zoners, and the Zoners are essentially a grassroots movement protesting for better distribution of resources in Night City. But they're considered a gang by some because their protests often break out into violence, and the cops often show up.
I suppose because of the collapse, people had to band together, and that's why gangs are a thing, I suppose.
Yeah, and it goes to, for example, poser gangs. Poser gangs are gangs where everybody biosculpts them and takes on the identity of characters from something. Television show is the most common thing. And how dark and deep and terrifying is the world that to belong to something, to have a family, you are willing to make yourself look like someone else and act like someone else to be part of something, to hold on to your humanity and be part of a community. That's a terrifying statement on what Night City is.
The Laughing Bat Edits asks, who do you think is more evil, the Scavs or Maelstrom?
Oh, I don't think evil is really something you can put on a scale and weigh. I think they both commit horrible, evil acts. And in fact, in 2045, the scavengers tend to be more technology oriented, and the Maelstrom runs scavenger gangs in the Hotzone, where the corporate center was destroyed by the nuke. So they're really not that different. In a 2077 sense, I mean, the Scavs, I think we see more horrible things that the Scavs do than we see Maelstrom do. But I think, Maelstrom, a bunch of Maelstrom guys are willing to just beat someone into the literally bully pulp on the sidewalk for fun. They're just as evil as a Scav who is going to lure someone and then slowly cut them apart for their body parts. They're just different flavors of evil.
Texan Templar asks, I'd like to know more about the spirituality of Cyberpunk. I've seen people saying that the net is basically hell. It was found and not created, etc.
Okay, that is Raish Bartmoss put forward that the net was an alternate dimension at some point. There have been cyberpunk novels which certainly suggest that in the past that the net is, for example, an alien world that we've tapped into as opposed to created. I will say that, and I believe Maximum Mike has a rant, a bit of lore, a conspiracy theory about it being hell in one of his Moral Rock broadcasts in 2077. So I'm going to say that's not a question I'm going to answer. But I did want to say spirituality still exists because when people are in desperate straits, they often turn to spirituality and religion. And so the reason I wanted to bring this up is because in 2020, we saw like 1 or 2 churches. And there was a there's a Christian church, and there was, I believe, a all-faith church, and there was probably one of those big super ministries, televangelist kind of things in the 2020 Night City book. And in 2045, you're going to see synagogues, you're going to see mosques, you're going to see Shinto shrines. You're going to see more of what's going on with that, because it's a multicultural city. And I just want to say that there is a multicultural spirituality in Night City, and it extends from the divine to the more mundane, where we have cults, like I talked about the Enhanced earlier, or the Inquisitors, or the Reckoners, who are destructive. So Night City is a great place where you can go to church, or you can go join a cult, or you can practice quietly on your own, or you could say, hey, religion's stupid, but I'm, and I'm not going for it, but maybe I still believe that humans have a soul. It exists. There's no death of religion or spirituality in 2045 or Cyberpunk, even though there has been talk about how it is. It's just maybe, if anything, there's a dearth in attendance as the world changes and people find it, just hard to cross town to get to a church.
Because you also got the tarot in 2077.
Yeah,
that's another aspect to it, I suppose.
Yeah, and that gets back into the question, the metaphysical question. Where does how does metaphysics and spirituality intersect? And is V seeing tarot or big tarot cards on the wall, or is V seeing hallucinations caused by the chip of these tarot cards? And that is a great question. And that comes down to, is Johnny a person in V's head, or is Johnny a program in V's head? And what is reality? And is reality what we envision and see? Are those tarot cards real because V can see them, or are they not real because no one else can?
That's a deep question.
That is good. Well, it all goes into being human, and being human gets into what is real. And it's a tough set of questions to ask, but they are important. Also, the cards look awesome, and I'm looking forward to getting a set when they finally. If at some point someone actually releases them, I'll be super happy to.
After this, I went on to ask my own question, which was, can you explain how the Hotzone works? Is there a good real-life example that helps us understand what is going on here in 2045?
Oh, I mean, the obvious glib answer is the Hotzone doesn't work. That's the point. But, okay, so, end of the Fourth Corporate War, a nuke is set off in Arasaka Tower, kind of above, at the top of Arasaka Tower. Buildings collapse, the big corporate center is destroyed. The shockwave goes down into the foundation. Night City, the central part, what we call the island, was built largely on fill, which means they filled in the bay and made land. And what happens when you expose fill to a shockwave at just the right frequency is it liquefies, essentially. So buildings collapsed, chain reactions. A lot of these buildings were housing lab facilities with dangerous things inside. Those things blew up. Long story short, the Hotzone, which is at the center of the island, is this big, massive wreck of rubble. So I like to say, imagine Hiroshima, Nagasaki, after the bomb, 20 years later, but it's 20 years later in which no one rebuilt anything. They built around it, but they didn't build, the few square miles around the epicenter. And that is, what you've got. It's not really like Chernobyl, because Chernobyl's actually still, the town, city near Chernobyl is mostly intact. It's being overgrown, but it's mostly intact. So just imagine a city center after an intense bombing campaign that is still full of old ghost buildings. We have said in the past that when you get far enough in, the sounds of the city fade away, and there's nothing but eerie, terrible, oppressive silence, broken by the occasional slip as rubble falls from a tilted building, or a scaver finds a piece of technology and struggles to remove it right before it blows up because they hit the wrong button by accident. It's a big dungeon, if you will, from role-playing game terms. It's a giant dungeon you can crawl around in and find stuff, but you're likely to run into all kinds of terrible, horrible things before you can find stuff. And most people who go in die slowly or quickly.
I also went on to further ask, with the big names out of the question after the Holocaust, such as Silverhand, Blackhand, Smasher, who would be seen as the biggest name in Night City?
Well, it kind of depends on what you mean. Like if you're talking, for example, if you were talking solos, big combat guys, no one's going to talk about Johnny Silverhand. They're going to talk about Morgan Blackhand. They may talk about Adam Smasher. They'll talk about Susan Forrest. If they're talking rocker boys, they may mention Johnny Silverhand. That's how most people would have seen them, or possibly a terrorist. But the terrorist thing doesn't happen until Arasaka gets more press towards the 2070s. If you're talking about just like who is the powerful people in Night City, one name that will pop up is Mr. Kernighan in 2045. Mr. Kernighan is probably the most powerful fixture in Night City. He owns Club Atlantis. He runs a midnight market once a quarter where the hobnobs, the people, the elites come to buy things they can't get anywhere else. He is in charge of the downtown area. Not directly, he is not the city manager. He is in charge of the group that picks the city manager. So Mr. Kernighan is a great name. There's others. There's Corp Reviver, who is leader of the Piranhas. So if there is a party in Night City, Corp Reviver is either running it or her people are working it. There is, Crusher, who is the leader of Maelstrom. There are quite a few. There is, if you want to go out into Santo Domingo, you'll meet Teresa Valentino, who is the city manager there. And Santo Domingo, since there has been a city council in Night City in a modern 2045 sense, has been controlled by the Aldecados. And now Teresa Valentino, with the backing of the El Norte cartel from Mexico, has won the election. She beat the Aldecado candidate, and she is pretty powerful. She has the El Norte cartel, who are in Night City, are more loyal to her than they are to the actual cartel. And those people sometimes are called Valentino's fists. Who knows what they'll be called by 2077? So there are quite a few. We purposefully avoided big overarching main characters in 2045 because 2020 was great, but the feeling that in the end, no one wants to play Star Wars, I think, knowing necessarily that nothing they do will matter because Luke Skywalker is the guy that blows up the Death Star, right? So we can't do that to the point where we say, hey, 2077 will change based on your actions to 2045 in a meta sense. Like CDPR is not going to make retroactively change 2077 to match your game. But we can say, hey, in 2045, your characters, if this is the campaign you're running, get to be the stars of the show. And it doesn't matter what Johnny's doing or Morgan's doing because you are the ones that are front and center.
Red Dawn 141 asks, where is Lazarus Corp now? And I also got him to explain to those who don't know who Lazarus Corp is.
Sure. Lazarus Corp is a private military and security corporation. They are like Militech in a way. If Militech was a little slicker, Lazarus Corp tends to be pretty slick. They have great style uniforms, for example. But also, if Militech only focused on the security and military portion, if they didn't do guns and manufacturing, and they're like, Lazarus Corp only does that. And the answer is Lazarus Corp is everywhere. Lazarus Corp did very well out of the Fourth Corporate War because a lot of people had contracts with Arasaka and were saying, well, if we have a contract with Arasaka for our security, Militech's going to attack us. And a lot of people had contracts with Militech and said, well, if we have contracts with Militech for our security, Arasaka is going to attack us. So they switched over to Lazarus, and that they built on that. So Lazarus is a fairly large PMC by 2045. And in 2045, they are, for example, providing protection to the executive zone, which is a gated community in which the very richest of Night City live. They are providing security to a couple of other places. They have a corporate center and training grounds in Night City. I want to say it's in the Glen at that point. So they're still around and they're still doing things and they're still providing their services, but they are purposely not trying to be big players because they want to be trusted to be your security and not the security company that's going to start a war.
Multiple people went on to ask this question, but they wanted to know about the group involved in the Arasaka Holocaust, which included Rogue, Johnny, Spider Murphy, and even Santiago to some extent, so I pitched that to Jay, including the question of where is Johnny's body, although I didn't expect to get much information considering how closed off some of their stories are.
Okay, so let's go one by one. What happened to Rogue? Rogue bought and opened the Afterlife. She reopened the Afterlife. The Afterlife itself was destroyed and she opened a new Afterlife. There have been 3 Afterlives. The 2 owned by Rogue, 1 not owned by Rogue. The 2020 Afterlife, the 2045 Afterlife, and the 2077 Afterlife. Is the 2045 Afterlife moved because not even Rogue can fight gentrification. So that's why she moved to Watson. I think the question in the list you have here is, how did she walk away without, why isn't Arasaka trying to kill her? Arasaka, I know some things are implied in the video game. I'm just going to say Arasaka is not in a place where it can do anything to Rogue at that time. And by the time it is in a place, so long has passed and Rogue is powerful enough fixer that she is no longer an easy enough target. And she has made enough deals. She has made some deals to keep the Empire out of the station. She has made enough deals that Arasaka is no longer interested in going after her. That is a long story. That Rogue is clever, and Rogue has sold her soul multiple times over many years. That is just how fixers work. Every fixer sells their soul eventually. Okay, so Rogue, Nomad Santiago wasn't in Night City during the Fourth Corporate War. Nomad Santiago was running the Aldecados, and he in fact sent his people, the Lobos, a group of highly trained Aldecado fighters, to help. So he wasn't present, and he continued afterwards to run his Nomad Nation. Rogue Spider Murphy, that's a great question. Next one. No, Spider Murphy is a question. Spider Murphy is one of the big mysteries of Cyberpunk. We may never solve it. It's more interesting if Spider Murphy is out there and no one knows where. And sorry, the last one was
Johnny's remains.
Oh, Johnny's body. Read Black Dog. Black Dog is a story in the Cyberpunk RED core rulebook. It is written by Mike Pondsmith. It is one of his best work. A fiction. I highly recommend you read it, and it may answer your question, or it may give you more questions. That's kind of the point, though, isn't it? Cyberpunk is a world in which nothing is true, everything is true, and everything you think is true is actually just something that somebody told you while they were sitting in a bar getting drunk.
That's a great analogy.
I can't take credit for it. That goes to Patrick Mills, who explained it to his point of view to me once. I was like, you know what, Patrick? That's exactly right. Patrick Mills works at CDPR and is our main point of contact when it comes to talking about lore back and forth with Cyberpunk.
Mars Zalek asks, we saw many types of body modifications. What I'm interested in, could Chrome extend the lifespan of a person? Could there be immortal people changing every sick or damaged part of a body or organs?
Okay, so the answer is yes. Why do you think Subaru has lived so long? Why do you think Rogue looks like she's in her 50s or 60s instead of in her 80s or 90s? So yes, Chrome can extend the life. So okay, let's take this on levels. Medical appliances, pacemakers, for example, they extend the lifespan of a person in real world. So yes, medical appliances of that level, cyber levers and the like, can extend people's lifespans. More Chrome of a more military nature won't do much for that, but you can get, for example, enhanced antibodies and nanosurgeons that will repair your body over time. Can people be immortal? So it depends on your definition of immortal. It depends on your definition of a person. The brain is the only major piece of the human body that cannot be replaced by cyberware, at least up until the relic. And the question is whether the copy of a person's engram on a relic can count as that person placed into a new body. And that is a big philosophical question. But you cannot extend the body, a person's bodies. If you count a person as their body, all the biomatter they have, then no, you cannot make them immortal, but you can extend their lifespan. FPC, which is a full body conversion, can live for quite a while. That is where it ends on my part. So yeah, Lizzie could be around in 2077.
And then you get into the philosophical debates about the brain.
Yes, exactly. Is a person's engram them?
Justicar347 asks, why can't they just scrub the servers to end the AI threat? Where exactly are the wild AIs hosted?
That is a great question, and I think you should ask NetWatch that. I mean, think about it this way. That is a great question. And why don't they do it? You know, is it a matter of resources? Is it too hard to go find them all and destroy them? And if you can't, why can't you just shut down the power grid? Or is there a reason to keep it up? Is there is there reason that NetWatch is keeping from the world? That's a great question, isn't it? The answer to a murder mystery is always who benefits from somebody's death. So in this case, this is a mystery, and I ask you, who benefits and what is the benefit of not shutting down the old net?
The incredible username of Jiggy McJiggums asks, if the AI breached the Blackwall, could they theoretically take over the cyberware of dead gang members? I feel like they would try to take any vessel they could.
Oh, that is a complex question I cannot answer at this time. The short version is, so the question you're asking, forget the Blackwall. Let's forget the Blackwall for a second. That's a red herring. Can an AI take over a person? And the answer is yes. We have an example of this in Tales of the Red Street Stories, where an AI, the entire plotline revolves around an AI essentially hijacking people and permanently puppeting them through their internal, essentially the phones in their brains. So yes, it is possible. And we know it's possible for outside entities to take control of people because we see doll chips. There's a whole conversation you have with a member of the Arasaka family through someone else. So if a person can do it, why can't a artificial intelligence do it?
Mr. Apple Pie asks, considering the current climate and perspective in regards to AI's integration into art, are there any companies that heavily corporatize that aspect in the cyberpunk universe?
So it's something that already exists, and it's existed for quite a while. There is a story in the 2020 source books where they talk about this news anchor, lovely woman, great smile, everyone loved her, delivered the news in a perky yet serious manner. She was the perfect anchor woman. And it turned out she was the perfect anchor woman because she was an artificial intelligence. And she actually sued for her liberation. And I don't believe we actually ever finished that storyline, come to think of it. But the point is AI has existed and has been used for quite a while. And it is everywhere in Cyberpunk. And it is a hellscape, and it sucks sometimes to be an artist. Musicians have it a little better because it's hard. There are virtual idols and such, but it's hard to be it's hard to tour a AI the way you tour a person, and touring is a big part of music. But yeah, AI all over the place in Cyberpunk.
Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find the user who wrote this specific question, but it was one that Jay really wanted to address. So here I asked him, in the 1994 Listen Up You Primitive Screwhead sourcebook, it says the idea behind Cyberpunk 2020 is revolution. Other games usually revolve around survival. In Cyberpunk, survival is secondary. What is important is accomplishing something. It is the concept of empowerment, the ability of a person to make a difference in their world. And then around the time Cyberpunk 2077 was coming out, he said, Cyberpunk isn't about saving the world, it's about saving yourself. The commenter goes on to ask, am I missing some nuance here? What does he want players to learn about the world from playing Cyberpunk? Does he want people to be inspired to act, to, in his words, use the game as a form of kata to prepare?
They mentioned in Listen Up You Primitive Screwheads that it was a much bigger world-changing, you are punks, you are there to change the world dynamic. And Listen Up You Primitive Screwheads, which is our GM's guide for Cyberpunk 2020. And in Red, we do a lot of saying the words, make it personal, make it local. And that is just, I think, part of how the world changed, but I think part of it's perspective. A lot of people by that point had been playing Cyberpunk 2020 for a very long time. And there was a lot of like, well, how are we making big differences? How are we being, in the words of Malcolm Reynolds, big goddamn heroes? So they're telling big stories because they already told all the street stories. With Red, we're still telling street stories. Also, we look at it in a different way. And we know the corporations are going to win in the end. We know Arasaka is going to come back in 2077. We know that it's going to be a corporate hellhole again. But right now in 2045, at this moment, you cannot change the world in a big permanent way necessarily, but you can change your block. You can build your legacy. You can make something interesting. And we feel that, punks fighting against the machine doesn't necessarily always taking down Arasaka. Sometimes punks fighting against the machine is making sure that your neighbors have food, or that your local apartment building isn't burned down so that WorldSat can put up a microwave tower. I think that is just as punk. And so I don't think there's a huge difference except for the scope of the stories you're telling. They're both punk. It's an obvious dichotomy, and it's but theming is something we think about a lot, and what it means to be punk is something we think about a lot. How we interact with the world is a big deal, and also that's also an era thing. In 2020, 2045, 2077, they're all different ways of interacting with corporations in the world, and we want that vibe to be specific to those eras.
Level Chemistry asks, I have read comments and threads of people talking about the percentage of personalities in engrams. From what I understand, in the case of Johnny Silverhands, Spider-Murphy obviously hit him with a soul killer as he was dying. I'm not aware of any evidence that points to Johnny's engram being corrupted or not at 100% integrity, other than the fabricated story we see during his introductory mission. I chalk this up to his massive ego and narcissism. Are these backed up personalities the whole personality of a person, or is data lost during the soul killing process?
This is my point of view is yes. anytime you make a copy of something, you lose something. You lose a bit. There's always data corruption on some level. And so, yes, you don't get everything. And what you do get may get altered over time. How often have you had a file corrupted? These people are just a collection of files, these engrams, right? So who knows? And then who knows how things are being played with after they've been soul killed? Also, who knows what being divorced from your body does? Are we capable of love because love is a metaphysical concept that we feel, or are we capable of love because of our biology and our biochemistry? If you remove the biochemistry, what do we become? That's a super complex, and it's actually one of the core questions of cyberpunk is what is a person and how does that person, and it's not a question, quite honestly, we're going to be able to ever really answer, because that's the point. It's the point of cyberpunk in this case is not for me to answer the question for you or Mike or CDPR or anyone. It is for you to think about the question, what is a person?
Aristocrats asks, is Adam Smasher still alive? When we defeat him, his brain is exposed but still intact. Knowing Arasaka, they most likely will put him back together again or some other corporation, since most endings Arasaka is in shambles. I also furthered this and went on to ask Jay, is Adam Smasher just a tool at this point in time?
Is Adam Smasher a human? Is Adam Smasher Adam Smasher? That's a great question. Is there only one Adam Smasher? And is that Adam Smasher that that V faces in 2077, the same Adam Smasher that Johnny Silverhand and Morgan Blackhand encountered on Arasaka Tower? Is that the same Adam Smasher that was a gang member in New York City? Those are great questions, and I have no answers for you.
Every Carpet asks, considering the socio-cultural developments of the last 20 years, what parts of the cyberpunk lore do you all believe have aged poorly? And have current events shaped their views of the cyberpunk universe? Do they see it as purely a work of fiction or a cautionary tale of a future we might soon live in?
Oh, that's a great and complex question. So let's start with the basics. There's a lot of technology back in 2020, for example, 2020 source books, which age poorly. Expensive brick cell phones, for example. We didn't see the rise of the smartphone back then. We did eventually. We had agents before smartphones existed, but even those, that was a advancement on technology that existed. So there are technological aspects that didn't quite age well, and there's always problems with socio-economic and geopolitical issues, which are hard to foresee. It's hard for something to be our future when the world. There are countries that existed when 2020 was written that don't exist anymore. For example, the Soviet Union being one of them, and so those aged not poorly but differently. And so what happens is, we have to think of cyberpunk as an alternative universe, just like the Fallout universe, for example. In Fallout, no one makes a Fallout game and thinks, well, we have to advance, update technology to account for smartphones in a way, or EVs, or the internet. No, we say, okay, technology. The world split at this point in the timeline, and technology evolved in this way. And we do the same thing in cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is no longer 20 minutes into the future, the way it used to be way back in the day. Cyberpunk, this cyberpunk, is a alternate universe in which technology developed in a very specific pattern based on early advancements, generally the mind-machine interface links and the creation of a full net and creation of artificial muscle fibers and cyberware. That being said, while we're writing, yes, of course, we're looking around the world and saying, hey, what's going on in this world? How do we mirror that? What do we do with that in a way that makes sense in the cyberpunk universe? And so you'll see things here and there. A very weird example is in New Westbrook, it's a district in Night City in 2045. There is a walled off section, which is entire, basically town, called the Combat Zone. And that is where they filmed the show called The Combat Zone, in which they take a bunch of people and they put them in, and they are unarmed. And they say, hidden around this combat zone are a bunch of weapons. Find those weapons and kill each other. And the last person standing wins a prize. Oh, and by the way, every so often, we're going to shrink the field. And if you're outside the field, a piece of cyberware inside your body that we've implanted there will start hurting you until you're inside the field again. And yes, that is Fortnite, PUBG, that is Battle Royale, Squid Games.
Yeah.
But we looked at things that are happening and we bring them in as it makes sense to the world. So we have to balance that. This is a unique world with a unique timeline, and Cyberpunk has a duty, not even a ability, but an obligation to, at some level, reflect the societal and technological pressures of the world. And that's what Cyberpunk does. That is the key element, I think, in Cyberpunk. And that's why Cyberpunk in different countries is different. Japanese Cyberpunk, UK Cyberpunk, US Cyberpunk. There's all Cyberpunk, but they all reflect different societal and technological pressures because they're all different places with different systems and different cultures.
To finish off, I got a nice final question by Seventh Hydra, which asks, what are they most excited to work on or expand on next, lore-wise? Is there anything they'd like to share for their fan base to look forward to?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you a little bit. We are working on, the big thing project I'm working out is the Night City source book for the 2045, the time of the Red era. It is fantastic. I was just working on it for this call. It is got so much stuff. It's going to be a big book. It's going to have lots of lore, hundreds upon hundreds of locations, images of every district on a street level. So you can say, hey, I'm on the street and it kind of looks like this in this district. A great new map made for us by a map maker named Saga McKenzie, where every street is labeled with a street name. Gorgeous stuff. That's the big thing we're working on. We're also working on a 2077 project, which will be a more expansive give people a more expansive ability to play in the 2077 Edge Runner era. And beyond that, I can't say things now, but if you keep an eye out in the next month, assuming you are listening to this in July of 2025, in the next month we'll have some announcements, because this is about the time of year where we start making some announcements as to other things we're working on. Also, every month we put out something free on our website, which you can go and download. It is usually somewhere between 6 and 20 pages, free content you can add to your Cyberpunk RED game. Sometimes it's lore, like last month, I think was last month, we released the Rocker Boy Index, which is a listing of every artist, every musician and musical artist band that has shown up in Cyberpunk lore up to 2045. Information about who the band is, list of songs, list of albums, genre type, and that is something like 25 pages of world lore, which is really cool. It was a lot of fun to make. And if it's still July, go over to Drive-Thru-RPG. You can get all our stuff at a discounted rate because it's their Christmas and July sale. So you can get digital copies of our many Cyberpunk 2020 and Cyberpunk RED books. There's lots of lore there. Plus, maybe you'll play the game and enjoy it.
And that ends the interview with Jay, who is always an absolute pleasure to talk to about Cyberpunk and is open to more collabs in the future. If you ever want to know more about the world, maybe I can collect more of your questions and we can do another video like this. But do let me know what you thought of this video and what you learned from it in the comments below. A huge thank you for watching this video and my patrons for supporting this channel, including my small fishes, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Sith Lord 906, Video Gamer 75, Planet Nanotarium, and our new guy V3XXE. My big fishes, This Mind of Mine, Ben Chance and Anthony Bonfiglio, my sharks Dan F and Roland Tyrannus, my megalodons Hazy Thoughts and Sinus, and my incredible starfish Nanohertz. Also a massive shout out to you all, as the channel just hit 200,000 subscribers, a number I never expected to hit when I set the channel up. So thank you so much. But with that is all for now. Thanks again for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.